mindset is, if it's illegal, it's illegal.
It's very easy to say sitting here in a nice cozy place when you have people that are suffering, that have issues, and of course, but the laws do allow them to come in. The laws do this.
I'm sorry, these are laws.
And there's no legal way.
Do you believe we don't have a right to protect our borders? Is that
absolutely we have to? That's what I'm saying. It's the government and not the migrants. If they have a situation,
on how many migrants should be allowed.
Hold on. A scorching clash erupted live on GB News as Patrick Christys, a favorite among viewers, went head-to-head with activist Fahima Muhammad. Patrick slammed her claims about racism, calling them completely baseless. The debate intensified when the discussion turned to the government's promise to shut down hotels currently housing asylum seekers. Voices rose, tempers flared, and the fiery exchange unfolded in front of millions watching live. Before you continue, make sure to subscribe, hit like, and drop your thoughts in the comments below.
You're missing the point.
Well, we don't even know at the moment what's happening.
Hold on. You're missing the point. These are illegal migrants. That's the first thing. They are illegal.
Well, if you want to go by the law, it's irregular.
You've said your piece. This is illegal migrants we're talking about, many of which have paid a lot of money to come here, many of which who are not seeking asylum. If we were talking about asylum seekers, different conversation.
Okay,
it's funny how you know everything about them.
Are you honestly telling me that if, I don't know exactly where you live, but if
I live in Richmond,
the house next to you, or flat next to you, whatever it is, was sold, and then someone bought it, maybe the government, and turned it into a 5-bedroom HMO and put a load of new arrivals in there, and then outside on your street or at your local park there were tents full of people who just arrived in this country, that wouldn't bother you?
Do you know what? If people are being criminal and they're doing activities that are criminal, that would bother me more. You cannot just criminalize everyone just because they look different from you or they speak a different language and you have a perception and assumption which just, brushes everyone in the same sort of way, just from a few reasons. That is just dehumanizing everyone.
I tell you why it wouldn't bother me, because it's a matter of scale. If you bring in a certain amount of immigrants that we can deal with, give them places to live, get them work, get them for their children for school, absolutely fine. Where the problem lies is when you bring in so many that you can't administer your country.
That's government problem.
What about the other poor people who were born here?
Well, this is it.
You need to work with them too.
Fundamentally, I'll put this here. Fundamentally, I personally feel that people who are British, i.e. born here, who have chosen to live somewhere, a particular part of the country, of their own free will, who've worked hard, paid their taxes and abided by the law, do have a right to be concerned about whether or not local properties in the area they've chosen to live in, because they like that area, are going to end up accommodating, say, like 5 different Somali families or something like that. I think they've got a right to be worried about that.
Why should it matter where they come from, who's living next to you? We are in a society that it shouldn't matter unless, of course, they're doing something illegal and wrong. Why are you picking on certain groups and making it a problem because they're like that?
So you don't. I'm not making it a problem.
Yes, you are.
I'm saying that
I think people the riots are happening.
I happily will. I think that people have a right to want to protect the culture and the identity of where they currently live.
Culture now. So that's going to become law. What does that mean anyways? We are all different. We all have differences. We're sitting here and we're all 3 different.
Absolutely.
So what are you talking about? You are now picking about certain people from certain groups, and you are actually now demonizing them because that's a problem. I do care.
British people saying
of
that they have a right to want their own country.
What, just by their own people? Is that what you're saying?
To be a more homogenous and less kind of breakneck speed, rapid demographic change. That might not bother you, but it does bother some people, and they have a right to be.
Well, that's not British values to have that kind of problem when you have that kind of like association with colour and caste and all of that kind of stuff.
God, I've never mentioned colour or caste once. I've mentioned culture. There are loads of different aspects to that.
There's so many different cultures within the British nationals. Do you know what I mean? You go to Wales, you go to Scotland, you go to up north, you go Midlands. It's all about that.
Okay, what I will say about that is I think it's exactly that kind of attitude that leads to people getting incredibly angry, and it doesn't help.
No, it's your attitude that leads to people that are jumping on the bandwagon and causing these riots.
Hold on. Let's march through the middle of this, right? There's 2 elements that concern me. One is purely about numbers and how we administer the country and how we look after the poor people we already have here.
Exactly.
Britain is full of poor people, and there's no doubt that if you have this level of immigration, you're going to have to juggle the queue around, and that means people don't perceive it as fair. That's got nothing to do with colour or caste.
Well, you mentioned it. You mentioned Somali.
Colour or caste.
You mentioned Somali people.
I'm going to move on from this because we do have the rest of the show, but I do suggest that you listen more closely in future and don't put words in people's mouths in an attempt to make them seem racist when they're not. Because I tell you what, it brushes off me. It brushes off me. I don't care about being called those things because I'm not. So I'm not going to have it on my...
Tony Blair has finally broken his silence, and his return to the political stage has sent a shockwave through Britain. What he revealed has shaken the very foundations of Westminster, and it comes at a time when Nigel Farage and Reform UK are rising faster than anyone predicted. But what's truly shocking is who is powering that rise. Not the usual voters, not the disillusioned middle-aged groups, not the old guard who felt ignored for decades. This time, it's Gen Z women, the very demographic once seen as the heartbeat of progressivism. Women who grew up being told that Labour would protect them, that the Conservatives would provide stability, and that politics was slowly moving in their favour. Yet now, they're turning away in massive numbers. Reform UK, long dismissed as a party for angry middle-aged men, is suddenly becoming the political home for young women in their 20 segundo and early train to segundo. And why? Because they're done with performative feminism, slogans with no substance, rising prices, unstable work, unsafe streets, and political leaders who speak but never listen. These women aren't chasing ideology. They're chasing security, truth, and a future that's slipping out of reach. Nigel Farage, blunt, unapologetic, and often controversial, is saying out loud what many believe privately. And unlike the polished politicians of Westminster, Farage isn't filtering his language for PR teams. He's calling for real safety reforms, scrapping benefit caps that punish families, tax cuts for couples trying to build stable homes, and more support for women who want the freedom to stay home and raise their children without being shamed for it. For young women who've been told their whole lives that empowerment means being overworked, underpaid, and constantly afraid, Farage's message hits differently. Enter Tony Blair, a man who rarely steps into modern political arguments. Now, suddenly, he admits, the centre ground has collapsed. This is seismic. For decades, Blair built his entire empire on the idea of a political centre. He believed in moderation, compromise, and triangulation. But now, he's admitting that this middle lane no longer exists. What used to be called fringe is becoming normal. What once seemed impossible, like Nigel Farage being Prime Minister, is no longer a joke. Even Blair knows that Britain is heading toward an era of political realignment, unlike anything we've seen since the fall of Thatcher. Reform UK has now elected its first female MP, proving that something fundamental is shifting. The party is becoming more diverse, more appealing, and more mainstream than anyone, especially Labour, ever expected. But the political earthquake didn't stop there. This week, Britain learned that billions of pounds are being spent every year to house, feed, clothe, and financially support tens of thousands of asylum seekers and illegal immigrants, many with no legal right to stay. While this money floods into hotels, transportation, facilities, and overseas programs, we are watching British veterans sleeping on pavements, elderly citizens skipping meals, families choosing between heating and dinner, young people unable to rent a single room, NHS waiting lists breaking records. And in the middle of this crisis, taxpayers are discovering that some of this money is leaving the country entirely, going abroad to organisations and programmes, while British citizens struggle. The outrage is unlike anything seen in recent years. Then, something even more shocking happened. King Charles, normally silent, symbolic, Apolitical demanded meetings with ministers and advisors. He wants answers, he wants transparency, and he wants accountability. This alone is unprecedented. The monarchy rarely, if ever, steps into live political controversies, but this issue has reached a point where even the king believes silence is no longer an option. And guess who is furious? Keir Starmer. Starmer insists the monarchy should stay symbolic and avoid political involvement. He fears that a vocal monarch could expose weaknesses in Labour's immigration plan, or worse, make Labour look disconnected from the public's fears. Tony Blair may have lit the fuse by admitting the obvious. The old political order is collapsing, but it is Nigel Farage who has struck the match. He is channeling the anger, the frustration, and the exhaustion of millions of ordinary Britons who feel lied to, ignored, and abandoned. And for the first time in decades, people are not just listening, they're rallying. We are witnessing a generational shift, a cultural uprising, and a political awakening. Young women, middle-aged families, pensioners, and working-class men all joining forces in a way no pollster predicted. The British public is rising, not with violence, but with clarity. Not with slogans, but with conviction. Not with blind loyalty, but with a demand for truth. Britain stands at a crossroads. The cracks in the system are no longer hidden, they're exposed for everyone to see. Blair has spoken. The king has stepped in. Farage is rising. A Starmer is rattled. And millions are waking up. This chapter will be written not by elites, but by ordinary Britain's workers, mothers, fathers, young people, and families who are done waiting for help that never comes. The story is no longer about parties. It's about people. It's about survival. It's about reclaiming a country that many feel they've lost. And as this minute journey ends, one thing is clear. The next chapter of Britain will not be quiet. It will be loud, raw, and led by the people who refuse to be ignored any longer.